Nailed it.
Much better.
Right?
No, so good.
Right?
Look at you.
Thank you. Right?
We can't.
We gotta, it'll take all day. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. How is Los Angeles for you?
It's going well. So quite a culture shock, but I'm here in person. We're doing this episode. We're doing it live.
We are.
Live.
We were supposed to do it in North Carolina, and we just got swept up in all the different
Yeah.
activities and different things we were doing, and also just kind of being burnt out from you were traveling and I was traveling.
I had just come from Vegas, and I just did MagicCon, and so it was like, and I also just spent time with my family too.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff, and then we all kind of culminated. So here's what I was thinking that we would do, because we've been talking about doing a second episode for a while. Here's some stuff that I want to cover. Normally, you know, on the episodes Better Than Anybody, I have no agenda.
Right.
But I have one kind of today because you're a bit of an exception in that we're, you know, working on, oh yeah. We're working on this together, and we're building this new thing together. And I think that's part of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about you working on the show. And then I do want to go over the homecoming thing really quick as we get started. I'm going to empty my pocket so I can be comfortable with my keys. So
you mean we're not talking about the new show that is two guys with glasses and fun printed shirts? That's not the show that we're... Okay.
Not yet.
Okay, all right.
No, we're not going to talk about that yet. So, TBD, which is, a lot of people don't know, that's the big dick. That's the
if you see that anywhere on anyone's socials or tweets or text messages,
schedules.
Yeah,
you see it a lot on schedules, and that's what that means.
Yeah, I put it in Rob's calendar a lot.
Yeah. So with that being said, let's start with the whole you working on this thing, because I think that's kind of the beginning. We're coming up on a year of me putting the show out. Every week pretty consistently. There's like maybe three gaps.
Yeah, because that was October.
Yeah. We're recording in October now, so we're like a full year of consistency. It is the longest run that At the Elephants has had of putting stuff out consistently. And you're a huge part of that. I'll share full disclosure with everybody exactly how it came about. I was talking to Brandon.
Yeah.
He and I were talking about this podcast and how I wanted to keep going. I was like, I really need to bring somebody on. You know, it can be a paid thing, but it's not going to be a full-time salary, like pay your bills thing. It would be a side hustle thing. And he was like, you know, who's trying to hustle a lot of side shit right now is Stephen Kopp.
It's me.
And I didn't realize, I didn't know about the layoff thing exactly and how that all worked out. So maybe let's start there, and then we'll talk about what you're doing and how that applies to what you're doing on this.
Yeah. So I, last time I was on the show, I was still fully employed at my previous job, which was doing social media marketing and operations for a startup company.
It's like a year ago.
Yeah, it's December, I think it was like December 5th was the exact date that I got laid off.
Oh, I meant that we did the episode, the
last one. Oh, yeah, no, it was about a year ago, yeah, actually.
So it's been a full year, and then you said in December, what happened?
So December, because I worked in tech, there's been a lot of layoffs in that space, if you're not aware, because a lot of financial backing is falling apart and blah, blah, blah.
What were you doing in tech?
So I was running organic social for the company. And by organic social, I mean I'm the guy putting all the posts directly onto LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff.
You're creating the content, or you're managing the distribution and posting of it?
Both.
Okay.
Some content I would create. Some content I would be handed. Like I would be handed a blog post, or I'd be handed a PDF document. And then I would sort of like either be handed an idea of the social copy, or I'd write the social copy myself. And then my main job was take everything and aggregate it into a scheduling platform, and also make sure that it was like made sense to the campaigns that the company wanted to run. So, you know, I'd get like culture posts from the HR team, and then I'd get like, oh, we're launching this new product, so we need all this content around this new product, and how long does that run, and what does that look like, and then once everything goes out, reporting on the data. Well, what did well, what didn't do well, and why.
That sounds like everything you just described sounds like exactly what I think anyone would imagine if you said like social media manager for somebody.
Yeah, which is hilarious because I wasn't given that title ever. I was never given social media manager, and friends that I know.
What was your title at the company?
Oh my gosh, it was experience something
What?
experiences something.
What the fuck is that?
It's on my LinkedIn. I'm sure I could find it if I looked at my.
Oh my god! The fact that you can't remember is ridiculous.
It was long. It was like really weird and long. But all of my friends who are also social media managers in other companies are like have told me the same thing. They're like, "No, you were a manager." I was like, "Yeah, maybe."
Well, it's kind of like how in the non-union world of TV stuff, I'm a field producer, but I like write and direct. But
Right.
I can't be called a writer or a director because then that would change like
Yeah.
title and money and union and all that kind of stuff. So it's really that, but they don't call it that.
Right.
So you're doing
I'm-
social media fucking management. Let's be honest.
Yeah, so I'm doing social media management, and I wake up on a Monday morning. I make my cup of coffee in my apartment. I was ironically staying home because I thought I had COVID.
Did you?
No, it turns out I didn't, but I had just traveled and I didn't feel too great. And so I was like, I'm going to stay home and like make sure that my window of time is like there and my tests are negative before I go back to the office. So I like opened my computer and it was like, hey, everyone, we're doing a round of layoffs. And I immediately got a calendar invite and called my manager and was like, what is this? And my manager got a calendar invite too. And it was just like, oh, it was like in that moment, there was no question. I was like, I knew exactly what was happening because I had been with the company for so long that I had seen it happen to others. So long story short.
Did you know another wave was coming, or like, did you have any expectation? You're fully blindsided by this.
Yeah. Not to like give too much information away because like it's a company, it's their own stuff. But
Sure.
But yeah, people did. Some people did, and most people didn't because like clearly managers or people who run the teams have to know what's happening. From what I've gathered, but I didn't, and
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I literally, the irony is that the meeting was scheduled like an hour and a half after the notification went out. And so I had an hour and a half to sit there knowing I was getting fired without being fired, which was bizarre.
Well, let's
We don't need to like, yeah.
No, that's weird as shit. Like, first of all, I mean, I want to take for granted this whole bizarre because I feel like I talked for like hours about how weird this is. The fact that the layoffs work the way that they do, and it's weird because, of course, I've never personally, other than the time I was at Comedy Central, was the only time I was ever in an indefinite job.
Right.
Like I've always had projects-based jobs and it's never going to last. And that's like my whole life. So it's, first of all, it's a weird thing to me to relate to like, but wait, I have this plan. But here's what I want to address is expectations versus what you experience. So you're doing social media management for a tech company that in the simplest forms, like most layman shit, what does this tech company do?
They are a customer data platform.
Okay, sure. Got it. Statistics and all that kind
And
of
data,
stuff.
yeah.
Aggregation of, got it. Cool.
That's a good verb to put to it.
Yeah, right? I know some good verbs.
You do.
I've been told that.
I know
about me.
words good.
I know some good verbs. Some sick ass verbs. So anyway, let me aggregate this for us. I don't know.
I was gonna let it keep going.
No, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You're doing this job for this company. You and I met in a theater directing like grad program essentially. So we talked a little bit, but not really about this on your first episode, which is like, you get this huge blow of like, you're not going to be working at this company anymore. But how big of a blow is that? Like, how much did you really want to do this? How much was it something that felt like a loss for you emotionally?
In the moment, it was huge. I remember I was crying. I called my mom. I called my sponsor. I called a friend. It was.
Why do you care so much about this job?
It wasn't the job.
Okay.
It was the fact that I later realized it was the fact that my identity and my livelihood and my financial security had been so attached to that for 6 years. And then it was all of a sudden gone in an instant.
It's a long time, man.
It is a long time. I mean, from 20-ish employees to over 200 employees, that company had grown.
From the beginning, you really feel like...
And so what I learned through therapy is that what I had experienced was not grief or the loss of the job. What I had actually experienced was trauma in the same sense that the body experiences a car crash, only in the sense that it was so sudden. When your
inertia.
Yeah, when your mind and your body experience something that is such a sudden change or impact, it is processed as trauma. So I spent a lot of December doing literally nothing. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of Domino's pizza. There was a lot of I'm going to play video games all day because I have nothing else to do and no one to report to.
They gave you a severance package.
They gave me a severance package, which was great. I didn't know what to do with it.
Sure.
And I went home. I went home for most of December as well to spend time with family because I needed to be in a space where I was protected and felt safe instead of being alone.
Do you think the lack of structure made you nervous about all of the security you had built, in your sobriety and the routine and all that, safety you'd had? Losing the... I know what I'm going to be doing all the time. Is that scary?
It didn't risk the sobriety. I felt very secure in that. I mean, it risked sort of the things that I identified as healthy behaviors. I had to cancel my personal trainer. I had to cancel my gym membership. I had to cancel insurances, doctors, all gone, instantly.
Right.
Access to medication. I take an anti-anxiety medication. All of a sudden I'm panicking. Where's that coming from now?
Right.
Because I can't, that is a regulated drug. You can't just stop taking it.
Yeah.
But the irony of all of it is that I had spent the past probably 6 months to a year talking in private with friends and with people about how I really wanted to work for myself. And I really wanted to do the streaming, the content creation, all of that full time. I just never financially could. And I remember my sponsor called me out on it. He was like, "You asked for this." He's like, "You told me the only way that you would be able to do what you want to do is if the company finally went public or whatever, and you made money off the vested whatever, or they fired you and you got a severance package." And lo and behold, that's what happened. So you kind of asked for the universe to push you off a cliff, and now you're panicking because you're falling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, damn, you right. I was like, it's right. I did this to myself. So once I connected that, I started to have ownership over it and be like, oh, wait, this is what I want. And just because there's trauma connected to the thing that I want doesn't mean that I should not pursue it, right? Sometimes we're given the thing that we want and not the way that we think we're supposed to be given it. So expectation versus reality, right? And then top of January, I came back and I said, okay, well, I have this money now. I have this runway. I know what my bills are. What do I do? How can I do this? And I consulted a lot of people about should I even do this? And people were like, two things. One, you should, because you can. And two, of anybody that we know who could do this and be successful, we think that that's you. It's not going to be easy by any means. And they're right. This has been the most erratic, crazy roller coaster year of my life. At least since my mid-20s or whatever. But here we are. And you actually ended up becoming my first client for the work that I'm doing now. So
I had no idea what you were doing. Like, I didn't understand what it was when you said, like when Brandon said, look, he got laid off, he's hustling all these different side things. And then I was looking at your social media and, you know, we had a conversation and you were telling me what you wanted to do. And I was like, I feel like I want you to do other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like some of that stuff is interesting to me, but here's a list of things that I need. And I'm willing to give you this much money for this many hours of work that pertains to like doing these things so that, and this is something I think I want to share with people in general about creating stuff. When people ask me about like, oh, I want to do a podcast or I want to do this other project or whatever, especially if it's perpetual. It's not like a play they're going to run for 2 weeks or something.
Then
like
close and then you put the thing on the shelf for years.
And then you're done, or you want to write a movie or something. That's different. But if you want to do something you're going to do all the time, like, and I mean everything. People come to me about this all the time, and I'm not. If you're listening to this, you're one of the few people who knows you're one of the few people. I'm not have like thousands of people paying attention to me, but a lot of people in my life come to me for, you make stuff. How the fuck do I do that? Like,
how do I make stuff?
How do I make a podcast?
Yeah.
And I've been asked about the craziest shit. People have asked me about how to make a podcast. People have asked me about how do I sell stuff on like OnlyFans and make content for that and curate like a thing for that.
Yeah.
And then people have asked me about how do I make like a game show or like a YouTube like a real talk show. All these different things, and everyone has a different vision. And I say the same thing to everybody, and I just don't think people really understand. It's like, you can make something as small as you want. You can make something as big as you want. The bigger you make something, the more people you're going to need to make it. Like, period.
Yep.
And if you can make a podcast, like we're talking on 2 microphones, and this goes into a little recorder, and the recorder has a little card. I put the card in the computer. And if we just did this audio part, and if you're just listening to the audio part, which is a large portion of our audience only listens to the show, they don't even watch it. It is available in video all the time on all the platforms, but it is mostly a listen to show. You can make just this. It's not that expensive. You don't even have to buy the shit that we're using. You can just use your phone and like set it on the table and make a podcast. It's easy. But when you start to scale things up, and maybe this is part of the way we were educated, it's like every time I make a thing, I'm like, oh man, you know what would be cool? Like, that's just what my brain does.
Yeah.
I want to one-up it. I want to come up with the better thing. As soon as I make the black and white video, I'm like, oh, it could be in color.
Yeah.
Like, and I get carried the fuck away, and I'm always trying to balance between, I want a full production company where I can staff like 9 people and I can make all these different projects, versus me having to do every single thing by myself to the point where I burn out. And then I'm not making anything because I'm like, I'm tired. I don't want to do fucking anything anymore.
Yeah, asking for help is the biggest part of making anything, and it always will happen. I think at some point, no matter where you start, you're going to need to outsource or ask for help in some way, shape, or form as things grow. And also, like, when people ask me about how are you doing that? How did you make that? How are you going down the path that you're doing? The irony is in the answer, which is, I don't know how, but I am. Because I always go back to Gerald. You just do it.
Yeah.
You're not going to know how to do it, and if it's successful and worth it, until you're doing it. You're also not going to know, the process behind it. And then you're not going to know after that, well, I have the process, now how do I automate that process? The questions that you're asking yourself come inside the doing. I can give you, this is such a recovery answer, I can give you what I did, and I hope that helps. Like, like, that's really all I can offer you is my experience, and if that helps guide you in your experience, great. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But
we had a conversation in North Carolina. We were with Wiley, and we were talking about the first day of class with Gerald.
Oh, yeah.
And the to like go off the thing that you just said about him and the doing it, like the first lesson that he taught us when we were all officially in class together was the basketball football thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, if you know Star Trek, it is a Kobayashi Maru. It is like a unsolvable problem, which in Star Trek is like the last thing you do in training before they give you your own ship.
Mm-hmm.
And in Gerald's program, it was the first fucking day of class.
Yeah.
And it is an unsolvable problem. You want to tell them what it is?
Yeah. So the question is, you're doing a show, you're rehearsing a play about basketball.
Right.
And you ask your actor to bring in the prop, and they bring in a football.
Right.
What do you do?
Yeah, and you have to have rehearsal.
And you have to have rehearsal. You can't cancel rehearsal.
Right.
You have to figure out what to do with the situation and the object that's given.
Right. And we spent the entire class that day and several more bringing it up, but that whole one class just debating it. And it was crazy because it was also Jerry was really in the early stages of recovery from his aphasia. So his ability to communicate verbally was the most limited it would ever be in our time working with him. And so he asked this question and we're all being like, of course we're doing the ignorant, naive thing, but also the only thing you can do, which is we're trying to answer it.
Yeah.
Like the point is you can't. The point is it's not answerable. It's not a solvable thing, and the discovery of the options is the work.
Right.
That is the whole lesson.
Right.
And it is a great lesson. But we spit out everything, right? It was like, well, just rehearse the scenes using the football. Mm-hmm. And Gerald's trying to tell us, but you can't bounce it.
Yeah, you can't dribble it. Like you can't.
How are you supposed to rehearse a basketball scene with the foot? But he can't say that.
Uh-huh.
And Ashley was there, and she was like helping him communicate. And it was such a great way to start that whole process of learning that. And it may be, I think you're right, it may be one of the most crucial things that I picked up from school and that motivates the way I think, not what I think, but the way that I think, which is a hard thing to teach people. And you and I do both have that attitude, which is like, we skip the step of, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
We skip that. And we're like, we're going to fucking do something.
Yeah, we're going to do something. How are we going to do it? I'm not sure. We'll figure it out, but it's happening. But that, to bring it back to like why we're working together on this, is that's sort of what happened here, which is that I didn't know what I wanted to do when I started working in this freelance role. I had an idea of like, well, I can do social media data and I can do brand strategy. I'm really good at branding and like I know how to help people with that. I'm an artist and a creative. I see other artists and creatives who are struggling with these things. But at the same time, as I've gotten more clients along the way, I've also learned that what I'm offering is curated. So for instance, you brought me the thing. You're like, here's what I'm struggling with. And I'm like, great. Where can I hop in to help with that? Mm-hmm. Right. Like, and then also recognizing, well, that's this problem, the pain point. I guess we'll solve it as we go. Right. And that's what we did. We ended up we built systems to make this podcast, this show, one, a little bit more automated, a little bit easier to get people on the show, recorded, and then stuff pushed out to social. But also, what is the show? Which is a big... I've listened to every episode of this show at this point almost. I think I've listened to almost every episode of this podcast to figure out what is it? What are we talking about? Which is, again, back to Gerald, the spine. It's the spine.
Right.
I don't know if you want to like elaborate on any of that, but like that's where I was coming from.
Well, I think that for the longest time, and I talked about this on an episode that I'll point everyone back to that I recorded recently called, I think it's called Why and What Is At the Elephants, or maybe I put those words backwards.
Great
but
intro episode.
I think it's very helpful for anyone who's curious about what the point of this is, because of course, like anything, like any good spine, you're constantly rewriting it and trying to make it better. And that comes from assessing the doing, not prescribing what it is, in my opinion. You know, there is a kind of journalistic, and I don't mean journalism, but I mean journaling. There's kind of like a journaling element to this show, obviously, on my behalf, but there's also sincere curiosity that drives me when I talk to people that I don't think I ever spent any time reflecting on until you were working on the show. And I always just talk to people because I wanted to know the next thing. You know, it's weird. It's like, no. I want to try to articulate this. I said early in the episodes of this show, and anyone can go back and find these, and not even just early, even in the middle, once we're doing like right before the pandemic, it was like, I missed directing class, and I specifically missed sitting around and being like, let's talk about the fucking football and the basketball. And then someone would inevitably tell a story about a time they directed a show, or they were in a show, or they did a thing. And we would all be like, oh, right. And now later, 3 months later, we'll work on a project, and we're using the common language of like, this is the basketball, this is that story about and building that vocabulary and that language with people was so amazing to me. And it's kind of how I grew up communicating with people, my family, and in theater and stuff, of just finding those references, those things that you can both point to and be like, we're dealing with a situation now that is like just core to the human condition, and it is like that. It is like that other thing, or it is like that episode of Arrested Development, or it is like fucking Hamlet, or it is and they're all the same thing. And that shit is my favorite. That is what I missed when I left school, because when I went to work in television, so we don't fucking talk about any of that shit. And so I missed it. And so I was like, how do I, other than like just inviting to like smoke people out or get them drunk, like how do I get people over to my apartment to have those conversations and start from an honest, sincere place that doesn't like, what are we doing? Why is the point? Well, so it starts with, where are you from? And the next question to me is always like, why the fuck are you from there?
Right.
Like, your parents moved there because of what? They had a job, I guess, right? No. It was church. No, it was, I'm like, okay. And there is just a follow-up to everything. It is such a stream of consciousness thing. And then after making like, I don't know what, 50, 60 of them, and talking to you, you're like, the show seems to be about this. Yeah. And drawing those conclusions with you has been one of my favorite parts of working with you on the show, because yes, you're doing some logistical things. You're doing a lot of like, we'll put it in theater terms, very stage managerial stuff, where it's like there's scheduling, people are getting emails from you, and there's calendars and there's stuff like that. But the insight that you bring in someone that engages with the content, it's such a large scale, is amazing to me.
Well, I think it always takes an outside eye, right? What I enjoyed about listening to all the episodes was sort of the layer that was, there's a dialogue here in this moment about a thing, and then there's a dialogue that the show is having at a larger sense and a bigger concept. And if that's the point, then I had to sort of like, sometimes the piece of art, the show, the thing you're writing or editing or whatever, eventually will tell you what it wants to be. I weirdly do this with like magic decks, where when I'm building a deck, I'm like, what does the deck want to do? And I'm not going to know until I play it like 20 or 30 times. And then I'm like, oh, this is... So there's like an intuitive listening. And as I kept listening to episodes, I would write down moments. We're talking about this now. We're talking about religion again. Interesting. We're talking about conservatory experiences. Interesting. We're talking about age. Interesting. Why? And as I kept writing and writing and writing episode after episode, I was like, these are the trends. This is the thing that we continue to go back to, which is not forced. You're not sitting here pre-prepping and scripting. That's just what naturally is coming out of people based on their experiences when they talk to you. So that was like, okay, to me, that's what the show wants to talk about, at least right now, if the spine has to stay fluid and mutable, is conservatory experiences, age in which we are going into them, whether that's good or bad. Where's the overlap between religion and study and art, those kinds of things. And, you know, a whole bunch of other jokes and stuff from that. But like, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it as I continue to have my own dialogue listening to it. So for anybody who doesn't know, I also, as I listen to every episode, I also do the 30 to 60 second cutting for the socials. Mm-hmm. So like if there's a good soundbite, I'm usually going to grab it, because the sound bites are also the thing that as we push to social are continuing to hit a nail, right?
Right.
So, yeah. So
in all of that, because that answered so many questions that I was going to ask you.
I'm sorry.
No. That makes room for, man, you know better than to think I'm going to run out of shit to ask.
3 hours later.
You know it, baby. I always have to turn it off because I have to go do something else. No, I think the next question then is like, okay, so what's the point? I always hear when I work on something, I always hear you at school asking, like banging your hands on the desks and shit, being like, why here? Why now?
Yeah.
You used to say that shit all the time. And I never used to ask that question before I met you. I was like, 'cause it's fun. And I just thought about,
yeah,
I don't know, shut up. But then I heard you ask it and I was like, okay, let's ask that from now on. Like, let's just see. I don't know. Let's just see.
Yeah. Do you know what that question comes from?
No, I mean, it seems like a common kind of thing. What does it come from for you?
It is, but there was a directing professor at University of South Carolina in my undergrad named Robert Richmond. He's very British. Robert Richmond. And he would always, when I took his directing class, that's what he was like, why here, why now? Which then got picked up by another directing friend of mine, Chad Henderson, who then started asking the question. And what I didn't realize about that question was that it is a directing question, but it's also a producing question.
That is the context in which I always think of it.
Because, I didn't learn that until working as David Binder's executive assistant on Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and sort of watching him produce at a high level and realizing that he was saying the same thing. He would have projects on a shelf that he wanted to do that were either with another person or celebrity or actor or whatever or not, but he wouldn't do them yet because it's not the right time. And he was like, 75% of producing is the right time.
Yeah, but also that's I don't want to use the word luxury, but you got to be in the situation of having enough volume to manage multiple projects that you've come up with and put together and are ready to pull the trigger on, but it's like about timing.
Right.
You got to have quite a few things. A lot of people spend like 10 years trying to get one thing and then it's not the right time for it.
It's not the right time.
That's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, I literally I was working on Billy and the Golden Pencil and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, so I shelved it, and now people ask me if I'm going to do it again, but the problem is it's not the right time because now there's superhero fatigue. Mm-hmm. So I missed that window, right?
Yeah.
Or I was super deep into producing a production of Arnold Wesker's The Kitchen that I wanted to do as a live kitchen, like a literal restaurant. And I didn't because pandemic, and also it was a lot. It's a big show. It's like 30 fucking people that you have to teach how to cook and do lines and do blocking. And then the bear.
Right.
And now I'm watching the bear going, that's the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's the show.
Yeah.
That is already now a popular cultural entity that I
Yeah.
can't copy because now everybody goes, oh, he just put the bear on stage. Like,
That's
fuck
why
me.
I'm like, I hate that shit, man. It's like fun, but it also drives me crazy because it's like I got a thing I'm working on right now. I'm like developing this pilot, and I'm trying not to talk to too many people about it because I just like I know I'm just gonna fucking be like finally get all my ducks in a row, and I'm gonna have everybody and people willing to pay for it, and cool people gonna be in it, and like, all right, we're gonna shoot it, and someone on some fucking PA we hire is gonna be like, oh man, you mean this? You mean it's the there's 5 seasons of it on Hulu, man. You gotta check this out. It's a lot like this. That one's funny though. That one's super. I'm like, oh Jesus.
This
Christ.
one's gonna be good though. This is gonna be good.
So why here? Why now with working on the show? Like other than it being income for you and everything, it's like there's gotta
Well, you
could do other stuff.
I could do other stuff. I will also remove discouragement because what I've learned is that when you produce something that is ongoing, the beauty that you have is even if something comes along later, you have the sort of like copyright that I've been doing it for a while now.
Yeah.
I learned this in streaming where the version of Magic the Gathering content that I stream on Twitch, I've been doing it for 3 years. So now people are starting to pick up on the format and the concept. But because I have 3 years under my belt, people go, oh, well, that's Kopp's thing. Like, you should check out Kopp because he's been doing that for a while. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I always said that about At the Elephants. I was like, hey, you ever try to do a UNCSA alumni podcast? I can't fucking imagine why you would want to. But also, good luck being second, baby.
But I would also like to, like, if that's any alumni podcast for any university, like, has anybody done that? If so, interesting. What are they talking about, right? But to go back to why am I doing it? One, it was my first offer client situation, so I knew I had to start somewhere, and I knew that it would be nice to work with somebody that I knew very well, and I was already listening to the show. So I was like, I already have listened to episodes of this, so I have an idea of what this is. And I also like, I believed that it could be something more. That was my thing. I was like, I know that there is a lot more to this conversation that is probably being asked on a larger scale. I don't know what it is yet because I hadn't listened to every episode. But in working on it, there is sort of this conversation around it is okay for you to not be doing the thing that you went to school for. In fact, most people aren't. And I'm actually kind of more interested in what that person is doing now and how it relates than if they're still in that space. And also, let's remove the shame and the guilt and the blame of not being successful, quote unquote, successful because of that. Because in conservatory world, in my mid-20s, believing that I had to be a director and win a Tony for directing a show on Broadway or else I had failed. Now I am a social media manager and content creator. I had to remove that blame and shame from myself. And other people have had to do it too after talking to them. And I think we should be into a space of like, it's all a fucking toolbox. This thing is a toolbox, and all the tools in it can be used for a bunch of different stuff. And that is really why I'm working on this show right now, is to have that dialogue.
I think that's a valuable dialogue to have. I think you're at the core of a lot of what. You know, maybe I'm realizing this right now, is while I was at school and learning all of this stuff, as I went from DMP to like being in drama, and at first I was kind of like, for a brief second, younger than everybody I was friends with, and then for the rest of the time I was there, I was older than everybody. And it was a weird dynamic. The longer I was there for too long, and the longer I was there, the more I kind of There's a scene in the movie Accepted with Justin Long where he doesn't get into college and he starts his own college, but he has all these students who show up who want to take his classes. And he's like, this is supposed to be a fucking joke. But he ends up having to like make a fucking college. So he goes to the real university next door that like is established, like big university, like sub Ivy League, whatever. And he walks around kind of in this haze. There's even like a slow motion kind of Garden Statey scene that's like they're all whipping around him and it's this hurricane and they're all stressed so bad about like their grade and each stupid little class and stuff. And he's kind of like looking around like, is there something in the water? Like, why is everyone here fucking crazy? And the longer I was there, when I first got to school, it was all stars and like this place is crazy and it just blew my mind. But then once I kind of got the beat, and especially once I was actually a student, which was way after I got there, it was like, you're all taking this way too fucking seriously. Like there's a lot of cool shit and I love it so much, but you have too much pinned on this. And I don't relate to you because I gave up on myself a long time ago. And so the fact that I'm even here is just like all gratitude. Like I can't believe that I get to be here and be a part of this and get to learn this cool shit. Like no one I've ever met knows any of this shit. And it's so cool that now I get to know it. And I'm so grateful. And there was this overwhelming sense of like everyone being like, oh, I can't believe this one acting teacher is not here this year. I can't believe, our dean had a stroke and so now the musical's bad or whatever their problems were. And I was like, but he almost died. Like, who cares about, we're all going to figure it out. Because here's the thing that was crazy to me is, especially in the drama school and definitely in DMP and dance, and I didn't have as many friends in music, but it's true of them too. It's like, and film, everybody, it's like you're so talented. And a lot of you are not only talented, you're also like super hot. And so you're like beautiful and talented and young.
Yeah.
What are you worried about? Like it's gonna be fun. And
what is your fucking problem?
a little bit. And then the older I got, the more I felt that way of like, you guys all need to calm down. And then as Steven, you've listened to all these people that I've talked to who are 30, 40, 60, 70 years old who are like, yeah, I should have just chilled out, man. I was hot and talented and young and it was actually easier and fine. And and now, you know what? I went and, I tried to act and I did some and then I stopped or I directed a little bit, whatever. But now I did this other thing for like 35 years. Yeah. And I love it. I loved it. It was really cool. And I'm retired and I do the Golden Pickles we talked to who were like,
that was really beautiful.
Like none of them were like, I built my entire career off of just acting. Yeah. But all of them were like, just gratitude and like, this is fun and what a cool thing we got to go here. Yeah. And granted, we didn't get to see the people who don't feel that way because they didn't come. They didn't. But it all kind of comes back and it's the same. It's not, I'm not trying to say like I was right, but I'm trying to say like there was something that clicked with me that is the reason why I do this podcast that has echoed across every person we talk to who is like everything you said, which is just like, let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is something that I'm still telling myself, which is that like, hey, you're talented, you're attractive, you're still 35, so keep going, right? Don't stop. And it's also the thing that when we sat in on Carl's acting class, what I wanted to tell them was watching them put so much weight on a 5-minute scene from Gruesome Playground Injuries, wanting
each choice,
wanting to really get it and realizing that like they don't know that they're in a sandbox. Yeah. They think that they're in quicksand and if they don't figure it out, they're going to drown. And instead they're just in a sandbox and the joy of getting to play in this room right now with all of your peers who are also playing. All of you are just playing to find the best, most fun, most funny, most sincere, whatever version moment, which is then going to change tomorrow anyway. Who gives a shit? It should, right? But instead, they're so focused on getting it right.
You know what I think would be?
I was like, huh.
Yeah. You know what would be a wild ass sketch would be like if you took the acting class that we saw, but you changed the medium from acting to painting, and you had a student who was up there like, all right, I'm going to paint the orange I want to paint. And the teacher's like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm going to paint it. You're like, okay.
Okay, great.
Go ahead and paint it.
Uh-huh.
And they just like barely touch with no paint to the canvas. Just like, it's not showing up, the orange. Yeah. It's like, right. Do you want to pick a color? And they're like, which one should I pick? Like, you should just pick one.
Yeah.
And they're like, I should pick red? They're like,
if listen, oranges can be a lot of colors. Like it,
just pick a color and maybe start with orange, and we're gonna go from there. And you know what? If you don't, who gives a shit? Because it's an orange on a paper.
If you pick red, guess what? It's an apple now, and that's okay. That's okay. Like it doesn't. No one knows that it's
green. No yellow. Fuck. Like there's so much tension about it, and it's like if that's the funny version of what we saw, but what we wish we could magically give them, which I don't know if it's even possible, because like you said, they don't have the perspective or the time yet to have this.
Yeah,
but the relationship that you want in that learning environment is like, all right, I'm going to paint the orange. And the teacher's like, all right, go ahead. And you're like, I'm going to start with the orange. It's cool. Sure, yeah. It was like, that would make sense. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of start, and the teacher's like, maybe a little red gives you a shadow to the orange.
Yeah.
And you're like, I fucking didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That makes sense though, right?
Uh-huh.
Yellow, red, orange, adjacent. Got it. All right, I'm going to fuck with this. And they're like, what about up on the top is the yellow because the sun is like, you're like, this guy's a genius. Yeah. And then now you're just like cooking, man. You're working together to make choices and figure out skills. And that's what School of the fucking Arts felt like to me.
Yes. To you, yeah.
Like, and everyone else is like, green, red, blue. Which is it?
That's why one of my favorite TikToks is, to go back to it, one of my favorite TikToks is the bear, but with peanut butter and jelly.
Okay.
Because when you remove the brevity, it becomes absurd.
Right.
And I wish I could like plug that absurdity and that removal of brevity into so many things that I watch people struggle with and do. Like we got 4 peanut butter and jellies. Yeah, chef. It's fucking crunchy. We didn't order crunchy, chef. We need fucking smooth. We ain't got fucking smooth. Like it's like it's just a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like at the end of the day. Crust or no crust, chef? Like,
I used to say that at IHOP all the time. We both worked at that fucking IHOP on Silas Creek, and I used to tell people that worked there all the time that would be tripping. I would be like, "It's pancakes, baby.
It's pancakes,
baby. It's pancake." Like worst case scenario tonight, someone doesn't get the pancakes they want when they want them. Yeah. They're gonna get them. Like, it's
There's
gonna
too
be
many
okay.
in this building for them not to get them. It's just win.
may even take a few tries, but we're gonna get them a pancakes.
We are,
man.
as they say, a house of pancakes.
Yeah, you need to calm down. I think that that is where the enthusiasm also comes from for me about why I want to do the podcast. Like, because I want to learn more about, I want to pinpoint, is it possible to duplicate the things about the experiences that we have all had that worked and mine that for some foresight about how we administer this education. Because the whole concept of conservatory education, right, is conservative. It is old. It is it is an honor of tradition and saying like there is value in trying to learn how to do this thing over more time than a single human is capable of living. So we're going to work together over multiple lifetimes to accumulate the knowledge of how this shit works.
Yeah.
And that's what a conservatory is. You were like, hey, yeah, there's new shit, and we could talk about that while you're here. But we have the shit that people have been working on learning for like thousands of years. And it's like, man, it's tried and true. It's practice. We know it works because like literally thousands of people over thousands of years have practiced it. It super works, man. And we'll teach you that as a foundation and then go make whatever new shit you want.
Yeah.
That is what it's supposed to be.
It's a crowdsourced education. It's a crowdsourced pool of knowledge and
of specific focused skill sets.
Right. And I think it's important to talk about that because it's also what we navigated in going to the homecoming, which is that
Let's talk about it.
Which is how that has deviated, and can that continue to exist when those foundational entities or people or structures are no longer available? There's a lot of questions and factors that are moving around inside of it.
Like what?
Well, like if I can only talk to the drama school in particular, but if Gerald is a founding person and Gerald's connections are also the thing that help found it and grow it and expand it and launch people to the fame or wherever that they are at now.
20 years after it started.
Right. 20 years after it started. I mean, that's literally that pot is simmering on the stove for 20 years.
Yeah.
But without that, what happens now? What do you keep? What do you remove? What gets added that is new and relevant and conceptual to this time, right? And because, one of the things that I have learned in my process that I wish I had learned at school, because I think it's such an invaluable thing now for people to know, is self-generative content. I didn't know how to work a camera or a microphone or any tech at all. And now all I do is like use technology to build and create things. So is that something to put into the curriculum? Is it not? We have to really ask those questions. But at the same time, what we're doing here in this podcast is also, we have to preserve the thing. We have to preserve the 100 years of knowledge. What happens to it, right?
Because otherwise it's just a modern program, which there is so much room for that too. Like, I don't have any issue with someone going to like film school. You can't have a film school. I mean, the film school at School of the Arts is a great school, but it is the least conservatory school on campus because it has less than 150 years of absolute total conversation about it as an art form. Like, it just hasn't been around enough. And so there is a great deal of work to be done studying it. And but it really is a very practical art at school.
You're telling me that the Greeks didn't have cameras and shit when they were like filming, like, no?
Not based on the books in Ellen Rosenberg's class.
Oh.
No, there were no cameras. There were barely lights.
I see.
Here's the thing.
I was going to say, so that Oedipus Rex OnlyFans account that I'm following is not what I think it is.
It both is and isn't. The thing is, and this is what I've told my wife, is like, what I'm really trying to figure out here, and this it keeps getting more simple to understand, because the more I talk to you about it and the more I talk to more people, what I'm trying to do is this. And you guys can all go listen to all these episodes to piece together the story, but I had a very specific experience on my education that was different than most of the people who went to School of the Arts. yours and my experience is a lot closer than some other people. But the big differences are I did not do well in school before I got there. And that did not propel me from high school in the spring to going to this great prestigious school in the fall. The journey that wasn't actually huge, just a few years, that got me out of, barely graduating high school to going to this amazing program that accepted me with open arms and then transferring while on that campus from one school to the other. It was very unique to me. I misused that word, but it was unique to me. But what happened was I was someone who grew up with this idea that I belonged in a place for talented people, but constantly found this at odds with what people were telling me. I had adults in my life in like theater and community theater telling me, you're so talented, you're going to do great things in this life. Then I had people at school telling me, yeah, you're like funny or whatever, can do the theater stuff, but like you suck at school, you're going to have a really hard life. Plus I had a family that was not showing me a lot of examples of me going off to be a happy or successful person.
Yeah.
So the school, I felt like, really rescued me. And not only did it rescue me and give me an opportunity, someone who was always bad at school thrived, and I did really well. I fell in love with this place, and I met my people and my tribe and all that kind of magical stuff that we talk about. It also fucks some people up really bad.
Yeah.
Really, really bad. And I am setting aside, for the sake of this conversation and time, not because I'm trying to be insensitive, I'm setting aside actual abuse. I'm not even quantifying what that means, but I'm setting aside actual abuse, and I'm saying people who just went to the school got fucked up by it because they weren't ready emotionally, or it wasn't, and I don't think it was anybody's fault. It just wasn't a good fit. Saved my life. It fucked them up. Both of those things happen on campus, on this tiny little campus that's only educated so many people. And I want to understand why the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
Right next to each other. How much of it was our personalities? How much of it is how we got there? How much of it is our families? All these questions that I ask of every person.
How much of it is actual curriculum?
How much but was the fucking school?
Yeah.
And then when you got out, that's really the investigation. How did you, and I've said this to people, it's not really that, it's transparent. How did you fucking end up here? Why? And then when you got out, what happened to you?
Yeah.
How'd you cope with what happened to you?
Yeah. Well, because the investigative side of this only exists because time provides context for all things. We can only look back because we're here and we can track the dominoes that have fallen to get from A or M, which is conservatory, to S, which is where we are now, and that's going to continue, but that conversation can't be had with like current students or even students that have just graduated. There have been like one or two episodes that have been more recent, and I'm like, we might need more experience to like really sort of like, but also you need multiple points on a graph in order to like be able to map it anyway.
But if we have those same people on years down the line and we look at those two episodes together, that's part of why I did that.
That's interesting. I'm super interested in that.
I like the people fresh out of school because of a couple of things. One, I want a little bit of and we have some episodes that are going to come out after this one that are the people you're talking about. And
well, those are the ones I haven't listened to yet.
Yeah, and wait till you hear them because I think the value is interesting. A lot of Marina and I, she was drama directing, 22, I think. We talked a lot about her just updating me on how the program that we both went to 10 years apart works now and how it's changed under two different deans and all this kind of stuff. But more than that, we had a tremendous conversation on the culture of the people who are graduating right now and the culture they're both graduating from at school and into out of school. And, you know, she's also Brazilian. So the American to Brazilian culture and the languages and all that kind of stuff is fascinating. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this like these group of people who went during the pandemic, how they are affected by this, because that's its own isolated thing. But the point, right? The why here, why now is not just my curiosity about those two experiences and talking to all these people about it. Obviously, the next thing, everybody, if you haven't figured this out, the next thing is how do we duplicate my experience or the things that were good about it and limit the experiences of the people that got fucked up by it? What are the changes that could be implemented in any way?
Yeah.
By whether who's brought in,
right,
or what happens on campus to try to curb that situation. And I think it is, I'll use the word unethical. I think it is unethical not as the institution that is doing such a big crazy thing and asking for so much fucking money, not to ask the question and to try to solve that if it's possible.
Yeah. How do you optimize and yet individualize the optimization?
Yep.
Which is a hard thing to do.
It takes data.
It takes data. It always takes data.
That's what the fuck we do.
Yeah. It always takes data, and it also is like there's conversations already being had. Like one of my favorite conversations from the homecoming weekend was around students starting to, do they pick their own paths in a way? Do you give them the first 2 years as stagnant, foundational, cannot be changed? And then once you hit the third, fourth year, maybe regardless of even what school you're in, you can then say, well, I would love to hop over and take a class here because I need to learn this for what I want to study.
Right? I actually
I think
surprised myself how open I was to like electives.
Yeah, I don't think it's electives in the sense that like you need them to graduate. Like some of those things were really like struggle buses for me, but like, yeah, being able to, and we had some of our class do that. Like we talked about a few of the people went over to the dance school for a hot second just to take a dance class.
Yeah, but we never got to go learn how cameras work.
No, but we never got to learn how cameras work.
Some of the best cameras in the world were like 100 feet away from us,
and we never got to
ever
do in that space,
which is crazy.
Yeah, and so
one day we could have done one day and been like, God, okay, all right. So much security.
Yeah. Or like even the option to say like, well, maybe I'm not going to take a class, but there's this film that's being shot, this short film. I just want to shadow it. I don't need to put any artistic endeavor or creativity into it so that I'm not expending creative energy.
Well, and it kind of came the other way.
But I'm on set.
It came the other way because they let all the film directing kids take class with Bullock.
Right.
And they got to sometimes come audit directing classes and do all that kind of stuff, but it never went the other way. Because despite as much we might kiss ass with Jerry and Robert, and we love them very much, there was never you really should go over there and learn some of that film shit.
Yeah.
Never.
Now,
not
like,
once.
Fast forward to like 30-year-old Steven on YouTube being like, how do I fucking plug this in?
Bro, when I have told this story a million times, but I'm sitting there with Carl, and he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to do TV. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you. Nothing. I asked Gerald. He was like, well, I did some TV in the 60s. I didn't like it. And I'm like, that's helpful. I get, what the fuck? Like, come on. No one's got anything. And no one was like, we had a film school right the fuck over there. Maybe for your senior year, since you've expressed the whole time you've been in this program.
Maybe you build your own individualized program that is a layer of film and theater so that you are focusing on television producing.
Yeah.
Like Wiley's partner, I love what Wiley's partner is navigating in their grad school, which is that they are building a program for themselves based on the things that they have given to them. And then also whatever else I want to add on top of it.
Which is so contrary to the conservatory idea. How do you blend it?
How do you blend? That's the weird full circle conversation that's happening, and why I think that neither the school nor the individuals have landed on anything, because we sort of are in this like, we're going to, somewhere in here is what we're looking at, but we We haven't found it
and
yet.
starting standardized and going more open-ended, I think, is definitely the trajectory that most of the schools have. I'm not that familiar with the music and dance curriculum, but I think they're a little bit more structured. But definitely DMP and film and drama have a little bit of that. I mean, you don't really get to pick your shows or your casting, but as far as like, there's always kind of extra projects that end up happening. There's intensive arts, there's all that kind of stuff. And when you're a first and second year in film and DMP, you don't even, I mean, things of course may have changed, but for the longest time, you really don't have a major within those departments. You do a little bit of everything. Because it's about foundation, or they call it DMP like fundamentals.
Right. Well, and I also think that
drama could work that way too.
Drama could too. And I think also, to go back to age thing, like, I think the kids coming into that program right out of high school aren't old enough to sort of like approach it as a grad school mindset. But the kids who are older coming in, like you and I were, that was my grad school. And I knew it. And I sort of built in my own mind a thesis around how I was working, which is that I started in third year with the full set of the show with the film click on it, the little I can't remember what it was called. It was the one where it's like every time something happened, the little like film beep would happen, and you have no idea if it's an alternate timeline or not.
Yes.
Remember that thing?
Yes.
Like, I started with that, and then subsequently each show removed more and more furniture until I eventually didn't have any more furniture, because I knew I was building towards something in my senior year, which ended up being Tender Napalm, that was as little to no set at all. So, but that's, nobody else is going to, like, I pieced that together for myself. That was my grad school. But those kids don't know that. Those kids don't have that ability to piece that together yet.
Yeah, and I think I didn't know it because I didn't know anything about what college meant or how it worked, honestly, because I spent all of high school thinking I would never go. But what I wanted and what I ended up getting was, I didn't care about the degree, which is great because I didn't get one. But all I wanted was, I wanted a grad school program.
Recent tragic events. Sorry, I just thought about it.
Yes.
Recent tragic events.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is the show. But I wanted just a grad school program by itself, and I didn't care about any piece of paper afterwards. I just wanted the education. I just wanted the knowledge. Yeah. And I wanted to work with really high-level people who knew that old shit that no one would teach me, because I grew up surrounded by that same mentality. It was just not about art. It was, your elders know how the fuck to do stuff on the farm. There's a right way to do it. And it's not, there's only so much room for you to improvise. Like, fucking do it the way that it works. I believe in that in a large way. And then it's like, once you learn that, that's when you play. Yeah. That's when you fuck shit up. And that, to me, was the fun of the whole thing. And I want to give that to more people, because I know there have to be more people who could be receptive to it, and not have it be this pressure, and not have it be this weight that they carry around, or that they walk around later being like, that fucking school tried to tell me who I was, and I didn't like it, and I can be whoever I want. And it's also like a personal responsibility and self-esteem thing. I think that's a big part of what you can't teach, and it doesn't matter how much we change the system. It would come down to, like you said, individualizing the optimization of saying, like, you know, I've talked to a few people about this, but it's like, you have to take a psych test to join the military.
Yeah.
But you don't have to take one to go to acting conservatory. And I would argue that they are similarly mentally taxing. Yeah. And it's like, there should be a little bit of a, how ready are you for this?
It's the willingness, right? As you were talking, that's the thing that popped into my brain, is the willingness is all, right? Are you willing to be broken down to be built back up? Are you willing to be asked the hard questions? Are you willing to do the work?
You're going to answer that when you're 17 years old?
No.
It's crazy.
No. Because when I was 17, I thought I was like invincible. I
Well,
thought I was
yeah,
a
who
rock
wouldn't
star.
say yes?
You know, I was like, yeah.
No, that we would all say yes, especially if you've been surrounded by people who are like, you're so talented, you're so blah, 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 blah. It's like, of course, people are going to be like, well, yeah, I'm special. So if the question is, am I special? Then yeah, fucking let's go. But it's like, that doesn't mean that, spending an entire morning truly trying to embody and I don't just mean think it, I mean feel it in your fucking soul that you are experiencing empathetically trauma that you're not really experiencing, and you're trying to force yourself to imagine what it would be like to experience these severe adult traumas at 17, 18 years old that maybe you have experienced, or maybe you haven't. Both. Fuck. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's not a small thing. And I think that it's like, that's a huge thing to sign up for, especially when it costs like $100,000.
Yeah. And also, it's 8 a.m. It's too early.
It's fucking
too
8
early for
a.m.,
that.
dude. It's a
can't-
lot. I had no idea this was going to be.
I don't cry until at least 2 o'clock, okay?
I feel like it's just, it's a lot. And I feel like, but at the same time, there are people who like, maybe they just need a breather, a year, 6 months, something to chill out after high school, get away from their small town, from their big town, be somewhere else.
Yeah, and then like
breathe into this
and show me what you've done with that time. Like,
right.
I love a lot of like funding applications right now, especially in the content creator space, are like part of your application is make us a version of the thing that you want to be funded, right? Show us what you've learned. Show us what you have done and what you want to do and what you could do as part of it. Like, this is really small. When I applied and auditioned for UNCSA, I brought a portfolio. I printed and laminated a portfolio of like 10 pages of the shows that I had worked on. And I asked Gerald and Robert after I did my 2 monologues on song, whatever. I was like, do you want to see it? And they're like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. But now I'm like, well, if I took a gap year, though, and I needed to apply, how would I show you how I've grown as an artist or what I've done, right? Like,
I don't even know if, I think in another world, the old world that we're talking about, I think that justification is necessary. I don't think I give a shit. Mm-hmm. I think just take the year. I don't care if you went and made kayaks. I don't care if you went and sat by the beach. I don't care if you just did a full room springer the whole time and just spent money and got wasted, but now you're back on your shit. Like, I would, as an institution open to educating people, I would not have a specific expectation of like, well, I hope you were doing art shit the whole time and working on it because I wouldn't have wanted you to get off track. I'm like, get the fuck off track. Fuck the momentum. That's part of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but to bring it back, it's Kobayashi. It's not. It's not a right or wrong answer. It's a willingness to answer.
Yes, I agree. 100%. 100%. What do you think? This is what we'll end with because we don't have so much time. But last thing, what do you think is the ideal version of this homecoming thing?
Yeah.
I know I put out my review thing. You probably heard that. But
yeah. I can't build a full menu here.
Sure.
But I
broad strokes.
Broad strokes, I think the class needs to be asked back to speak in some way.
Yeah.
I think that is a I am seen and heard, and my life or my experience has interest or relevance to help these students in whatever way that might be, because that was a huge impact on watching another class do it when I was there. Whether that takes the school to coordinate or it takes the alumni of that class themselves to coordinate or both, I don't know.
Right.
I think you also have to... I personally love getting to sit in on class. That was my favorite thing.
Agree.
I also think you have to take it off campus. I think... we talked about this when we were there. I think having gone back to Winston and seen the change and the growth that the city has had over 10 years, you have to like also let them re-experience the city, because part of going to school there is not just going to school there, but it's about that town. And so the local breweries, the local artists that are happening, like all the stuff that has flourished in that time, like we're adults. We can have adult experiences that are on campus and off campus so that we're reliving the whole bubble, the whole thing, not just sort of what's happening on that campus itself.
If you had drink tickets that were good at 4 or 5 different spots on a certain night, and you had enough people there, and it's like, we'll see where everybody ends up.
Yeah.
But we worked with them. There's a sponsorship or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like West End Opera House, Finnegan's Wake, all those places that you're like, oh, let's fucking go.
Absolutely.
Like, people would be so excited.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you. And I think the biggest thing that for me that I'm like, what? I don't know if it's like a state funded problem. I know they have all sorts of red tape they run into because of stuff like that, but the businesses, all the alumni businesses, from Artist Strategy to Easy Talk to everything.
There's
like
so many.
Your fucking business, this podcast. There's so many things that people are like, we will print out poster boards and easels and bring shit, and we will set up a booth. Like, we will do the work of making a thing worth seeing. But if you'll say that there's space for us and you're going to help us all interact with each other, because if you can bring people there for social events, you bring them there for artistic or otherwise recognition, whatever that means, which I think is in the reunion panels is the best way to do that. And then you know what would be really dope? It would be really great if there was like a one-off performance that you could only see that weekend. Like, I don't know, Brett Gelman doing stand-up, or like a screening of a film that's like not out yet, that's only there.
Interesting.
Something exclusive that you're like, oh, fuck, we got to go back. We'll hit the panel and the stuff while we're there, and I think there's drinks and stuff, but I got to go because Missy Pyle's doing a comedy show, or there's a something, and they never, this musician is doing, and they never fucking do blah, blah, blah.
That's good.
Like, something exclusive that would make it feel like, oh, fuck, and the students are going to go to that shit too, and everybody's going to fucking be there.
Yeah, getting the students excited to go to the thing, because then you're marrying old and new in the same room. That's also huge.
Right.
Because that's also what I felt like was not, like, connecting with the acting students in that class was the best part, because I was like, oh, this is the bridge right here.
Right.
And then the rest of it was like a lot older people and us, you know? So I didn't even think about that, but I would have eaten that shit up if it was like some exclusive event or something.
A comedy show, a music show, a screening of a film. If it were dance, it would have to be very dynamic and something like celebrity driven and all. I'm like, and I'm just being honest. I'm not saying that these people have more value, but I can't not put a little bit of the Hollywood mindset on it. It was like, do you want to sell tickets to this fucking thing?
Yes.
Put a name on the poster.
If you can create the exclusivity, you create the hype.
Yeah, and it has to feel, it feels super fucking special. What if Bob Francisconi had given a talk back? What if he had sat on stage and talked to somebody for a half an hour this weekend?
Yep.
Everybody is like, is he still alive? Him and Molly don't leave the house because they're older. They're worried about COVID.
Yeah.
They, all these legitimate things. But for this one night, we'll even do tests and masks for him and shit. We'll turn whatever makes him comfortable. But for maybe the last fucking time.
Yeah. Yep.
This is going to be a thing. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
And every year you have to come up with a new thing, which is a pain in the ass. But come up with one thing. One thing a year that gets everybody like, God damn, that would be cool. And it's like you wouldn't have to tie down like 40 people. You just get like those ideas I just threw out are like singularly like 1 to 5 people committing that they'll do it, and you have the magnet.
Yeah. that as somebody who's done event marketing in that way, that also is like, man, I feel like homecoming is like somebody's full-time job. Like year over year over year, this is that person's like, to make that experience as beautiful as possible. Like,
and if you got the local sponsorships, you could pay that person's salary.
Mm-hmm.
You subsidize their salary for the event by getting sponsorship for the event, those food trucks, all that different shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not fucking doing it. But all these ideas are free. They're free.
You're welcome.
I will help. And I will give the ideas, but I really think there's value in all of this shit. And it would be so cool if it were like a little homecoming festival thing.
Well, I think that is the thing to like pass on in this episode, is also like for future classes that are going to be attending homecoming, you can also create experiences for yourself and your class together.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to wait for the school. You don't have to wait. That is a theme that I've been noticing a lot this year, is I do not have to wait from some entity to be given the opportunity to make the thing or have the experience.
No permission required.
Exactly. So if y'all want to do something, do it.
100%.
Ask for forgiveness later, not permission.
If ever. Usually just people are like, wow, cool, thanks. Glad you made a fucking thing.
Or that, yeah, there's like just pure gratitude out of it. Yeah.
Usually, yeah. You're like, wow, you just made this? Great. Thanks for talking to me, dude. We'll wrap it up. We'll do it again.
Welcome.
Love you.
Love you.